Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kitty Mary and today I just realized that I haven't shown you in a video what I make for my Christmas feast. I have a recipe slash kind of guide on some of the things that I do, some of the elements that I use and I make. And I've shown you my Christmas feast and my Christmas dinner table several times over the last few years, but I haven't made a video where we step by step go through the different elements and what are the best substitutes and alternatives to animal products and how to make it more sustainable. We're gonna do that today. However, before we do so, this video is sponsored. This video is sponsored by Ren. Ren is one of my long-term partners. It is an online carbon offsetting platform where you can subscribe with a monthly fee and then you can support different types of projects. And it's not only tree planting operations, it's everything from biodiversity products to energy efficiency. It's political projects and technological innovation. It's a really, really cool concept. You can also go onto their website and see what the money is being spent on and what's happening and sort of where our money going. The transparency is chef's kiss. As such, I'm super happy to say that Ren is the sponsor of this video, and if you use the link down below, Ren will cover your first month of subscription, which means that functionally for you it will be free. Pretty cool. Thank you so much to Ren for sponsoring this video. Now, let's make some Christmas food. To kickstart the day, we're gonna start up making dessert because it needs to rest for a really long time and it's several steps. So we're gonna make the dessert first, and the Danish dessert for the sort of traditional holiday Christmas feast is called risalamande, or like rice à l'amande, so rice porridge with almonds. It's pretty simple. It's not French. It sounds like it. It's a Danish dish, I'm pretty certain. And it's a rice porridge that you whip whipped cream into, and then you add almonds, and then you have cherry sauce on top. So the first thing we're gonna do is that we're gonna prepare the base for the porridge. And in the spirit of zero waste, it's very lucky that the best rice to use for this by far are these ones that come without plastic, just in a cardboard box. And I think this has been the packaging always. It's very nostalgic, this packaging. It's a very short grained type of rice we're using for this dish, and it's gonna like completely soften out and become like this pudding porridgey consistency. Then we're using water, and then we're using almond milk. Usually it requires dairy, but almond milk, especially when we're making it into the risalamande, is gonna be so good. I love using almond milk for this specifically. We're using 5 deciliters of almond milk and we're using 2 deciliters of water. So for starters, we're just gonna add the water and the rice. And we're gonna bring this to a boil. The recipe we're doing today is actually quite energy efficient, so we're just gonna bring this to a boil, then we're gonna add our almond milk, and then we're just gonna let it rest underneath some covers. Simply just let that heat circulate, and then we're not gonna need the stove anymore. So just bringing it to a quick boil, boiling it for 10 minutes, and then letting it rest covered. I feel like it's good with some energy efficiency in these trying times. By the way, you can also make this dish and not take it the extra mile to make it risalamande, but you can simply just make the porridge and then serve that with butter and cinnamon sugar. That's also a Danish specialty called risengrød, like rice porridge. And if you're doing that, you'll need to add some salt as well. But because we're turning this into a sweet dessert, we're not gonna use the salt. Danes are really divided when it comes to which one is better. Our rice is boiling, so I'll need to stir it for about 10 minutes. Then we're gonna add the almond milk and let it rest. The old-fashioned method calls for wrapping in newspaper. I don't have any newspaper, so we're just gonna use some cloth, but I figure it's gonna be fine. Which I do know is famous last words in this kitchen, but I think it's gonna be great. Now, there's absolutely no Danish holiday feast without potatoes. And a plethora of potatoes usually. We do both peeled and boiled potatoes, and then we usually do this caramelized, where we turn them over in butter and caramel. I think we're just gonna do one type of potato today. Also, I don't necessarily like the caramelized potatoes. I think they're way too sweet in a savory dish. But some people really, really like them, and they're super easy to make vegan as well, because vegan butter is quite available as an alternative. So that's super, super easy to make. Today though, we're just gonna make boiled potatoes because I do enjoy them more. So we need to peel these. Where is my peeler? I don't know where anything is in this kitchen at this point. Okay, there we are. Now that we're starting the actual cooking part, I like to take a bowl. Just, this is my preferred one. Simply just to store all my veggie scraps so I don't have to continue walking through the kitchen and sort of disposing of them in the proper way or saving them, etc. They all just go in here. It makes it so much easier, and I can peel my potatoes directly into my bowl. Simply just for efficiency, and then you also have a tidier table, which is so much easier to work with. Now we're sort of getting started on the mains. So there are 3 options. We're going to do 2 of them. And the first option, the one that we're not going to do, involves mock duck. So for the classic Danish holiday feast, we either traditionally do roasted pork belly or we do duck. Those are the 2 most common. There are variations, but those are the 2 most common. And to do vegan alternatives, you can do mock duck. They come in a can like this. This is a soy-based substitute. You can get this in many Asian supermarkets. This is where I get mine. I take it out a couple of hours in advance, ideally overnight, let it marinate, and then you just fry it on the pan. Huge recommendation. It's super great. We are going to do the alternative for roasted pork belly. We're going to use a recipe that leans towards my beef Wellington recipe, so a vegan beef Wellington. But we're not going to do the seitan roast inside. We're going to do something that leans more towards a duxelle. So we're going to use some soy protein, some mushrooms, some hazelnuts, some onions, and make a nice minced consistency dough on the inside. And then we're gonna wrap that in a nice buttery dough. Let that rise, it's gonna be amazing. And then we are gonna use celery to make a duck breast. It's not gonna taste like duck, it's gonna taste like celery, but I love it. Also, I got a little flag last time I talked about celery because I just said celery, and this is like celery root or root of celery, and then there's like the celery, which is like the long green ones. In Danish, they're just called celery. And then you can specify that you mean like the leafy one or the rooty one. But overall, we just say celery, which is why I just said celery. But this is the type I'm talking about. You get it? It's not that difficult. Okay, so this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna peel this as well and cut it out into some nice, I really want to say like breast shapes, but that's not what I mean. But I hope you get, we're gonna cut them out into some nice arrangeable pieces for a plate. Looks a little bit like duck breast, but it's not gonna be duck breast, but it's gonna be so amazing. And the reason why I wanted to do celery specifically, this autumn I started cooking more with celery and I love the taste so much. The absolute chaos and mess that's peeling a celery root. It's always this. Here we have our celery just in a little tray that I can put into the oven. We're gonna do that in a second, and we're also gonna do a little bit of marinade to put on top. Another update, the potatoes have done boiling, so I'm just gonna set those aside until we need those. I cut the celery in half, and then I cut those halves in halves as well. And then I just peeled them down just to make sure that they looked a little bit nicer, a little bit more even before I started cutting into the surface of them. Now we're gonna do the marinade and put them into the oven. Making the marinade, we're gonna do some red wine, we have some olive oil, then I have some vegetable stock, and we have some bay leaf, salt and pepper. Just gonna throw that together. And just to add a little bit more flavor to the marinade, I did have this pea-based miso in my fridge. So we're gonna use that as well because that does sound really interesting. Use whatever you have, really. You know what, to add a good caramelization on top, we're just gonna use a little bit of syrup. I have my little skeleton spoon here. So we're just gonna glaze them with syrup as well. Gonna set these aside and we're gonna get started on the other main. The beef Wellington I usually make actually has beets in it, and this really doesn't. So the main beet Wellington that I do is like a seitan roast that I color with Dijon mustard and beetroot juice. This is going to be different, mostly because I don't actually have any more of the flour that I used to make seitan. So we're gonna do something differently. So we're gonna use a soy-based protein substitute that I love, 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 love. We're gonna add mushrooms, onions, and red cabbage to this roast as well. This is the replacement that I use when I make the dish this way. It's the Shape Me minced from Naturli. This is by far one of the best substitutes that are out there, and I use it for everything from like burgers to lasagna to holiday meals. It's one of the first things that we have in plastic in this video. We are not going to avoid plastic absolutely completely. So you can sort of regulate what you want to do and what you do not want to do. You can also make it like a complete nut roast and then mix in rice, etc. Then you could avoid the plastic. I really like this. It's like a holiday treat as well. So I want to make it extra special, which is why we're using it. Now you can chop all your mushrooms and onions super nicely by hand. You can sort of chop them brunoise style. I'm just gonna chop them a little bit less fine, and then we're just gonna add them to a food processor so we get a better, like even and more homogeneous consistency. That also saves me a lot of time. Just chopped my hazelnuts super finely. This is sort of the consistency we're looking for. Here we have the onions and the mushrooms also mixed in. Now we can add it to the pan. Adding our mushrooms, hazelnuts and onions. And adding in the minced protein, right? And see, we don't want it to be too dry, so I have some cabbage. This is red cabbage. We also use this on the side. This comes in a glass, sort of pickled. It's really nice. I love it to bits. I could eat it with everything. And it does come with a little bit of liquid to it, so we're just gonna add about 3 tablespoons of the cabbage, also for some color. Then we're also gonna add a little bit of vegetable stock and some red wine, sort of just to get things going, okay? Also gonna add in some bay leaf, and you can at this point do whatever spices that you prefer. I also like to add a little bit of cinnamon and some orange peel, etc. Just took the celery out for the first time. I'm just gonna reapply some of the marinade. You can also use what's in the bottom of the tray here, but so far it's already starting to look really nice. We do need a lot more char on this and some nice surface texture. 180 degrees Celsius, at least half an hour more. But we'll know when we know. I just put it into a bowl to cool down. You don't want it to be completely piping hot off the pan when you put it into the puff pastry. Then your puff pastry is going to fall apart completely because of the heat and the moisture, and it's not gonna be great. So we're gonna let this cool off before we do anything with it. Also, when it comes to puff pastries, you can make it yourself. I've done that a couple of times. It is the biggest hassle, and whenever I'm cooking like actual holiday dinner, I have a lot of things to do like outside the kitchen, you know, guests entertaining, etc. I don't want to spend my time dealing with a homemade puff pastry dough. So I buy my puff pastry pre-made. And the great thing is, a lot of the cheaper options are actually plant-based because it's too expensive to put butter into the product. So to keep the prices down, they just use oil. Super easy. So a lot of the cheaper puff pastries actually are just plant-based by nature because it's easier. So I got myself one of those, and we're gonna put the roast into that. Okay, let's make the gravy while this cools down. So gravy. For many people, and especially Danes around their holiday feast, the gravy is one of the most important things, and there are a million ways of making it. This is my preferred way. It's super easy as well, and you don't need a lot of specialized ingredients, which I think is pretty fun. And you can play around with the flavors, add more sweetness, add more savory elements. Like, you can do whatever really you want. This is just how I prefer to make it. In Danish, the gravy that we use for our holiday feast is literally just called brown gravy. We haven't been that imaginative when it comes to how to express food. First of all, I'm taking 50 grams of the vegan butter. Now, would I have preferred to not make this in a wok? Absolutely I would, but the only like small saucepan that I have is currently resting nicely under my covers. Our butter is completely melted. We'll add in our flour. I'll start by 2 tablespoons, and then you can always add more, which we will need to, at least 2 more, I guess. Doughy consistency that sort of lets go of the bottom of the pan, so it's not a batter that we're going for, it's more dough related than batter related. Our vegetable stock. Again, just a little bit at a time, so you don't overwhelm your base. Now we're gonna add in our red wine. Oh yeah. This stock is a little bit more potent, it's completely brown as well. And we're gonna add all of that in too. It's gonna go in with some salt and pepper. Sort of bring it to a nice, humble little boil and make sure it reduces nicely. I'm just gonna add a little bit of clementine zest as well, just to add some just acidity, some sweetness. I really like what that does to the dish. Otherwise, it's just gonna be savory, 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 and just very fat and full-bodied. And I do like to add a little bit of freshness to it because the rest of the dish is also going to be extremely full-bodied. That's sort of the main point with holiday food, I guess. So we're just adding just a little fresh. Now I'll just let it rest completely until I need it. I also just took a little bit of the gravy and brushed our celery. This is what I have. Also in packaging, unideal, but the amount of hours that I saved doing this. I mean, it's a good investment, that's all I'm saying. So that's a priority. You can of course make a completely different dish. Keep it in the fridge, by the way, for as long as you can. Don't let it rest outside of the fridge before using it, because then you will run the risk of having it just completely melt together into one ball. We're gonna take our filling and place it really nicely in the middle. Then we're gonna cut each side into small strips and start layering them on top of each other, kind of like a braid. Then we're gonna brush it down with some oil and pop it into the oven until the outside is nice, golden and crispy. And then we're good. And this is what it looks like before the oven. I put a little bit of space in between some of these strips of dough, simply just to get them super, super crispy and kind of resemble or like mimic the roasted pork belly texture a little bit. So they become super crispy and puffed up, and you can dip your gravy in them. It's gonna be great. I also just took the celery out of the oven, and look at this. This is so nice. This is about 20-25 minutes in the oven at 180 Celsius, and I think we're looking pretty good. And here we have the final result. We have the potatoes, we have the Wellington, we have the pickled cabbage, the gravy, and then the celery duck. This is my take on a plant-based vegan holiday feast. This it smells so nice. Sitting here with this just right in my face, I cannot wait to eat this. But this is everything. This is what I would serve. This is what I've been making for my family for the last 4 years, and I have heard no complaints yet. So I'll just keep making this, and everyone's happy. Cool. This is the vegan cream that I prefer to use. I have used this for years, and I don't know what I would do if I couldn't find this specific one. This is a German one, and it's just really, really nice. It's extra sweet. They make 2 varieties, so one that's made for both savory and sweet cooking, and this is specifically made for desserts. It's really, really nice. You can also use the Alpro whipped cream if you want. In the spirit of the most Christmassy video I will probably do this year, I woke up today and this was the view. Snow has fallen overnight and I had absolutely no idea. I was almost a little bit shocked. It's so nice though. So guys, as you can probably tell, it's a new day. When the porridge was ready to be made into miscellaneous, it was way too dark for me to film anything of value, so I just decided to let it rest overnight, which is actually also what I would recommend doing. It's what I usually do when I make it for real. Then I make it the day before and just let it rest overnight. It makes the porridge so much better. So anyway, that's my recommendation, and that's also what we ended up doing today. But the porridge is absolutely ready now. I divided it into a couple of different bowls, put the rest of them in the freezer so I can use them for later and for, you know, Christmas parties, and so I can easily bring the vegan version. So we just have a little bit of it here, and we're gonna whisk our whipped cream into it, as well as some vanilla. I also decoded some almonds. We're gonna chop those and put those in. That we're not gonna chop all of them. So when you serve this dish, you serve it in a big bowl and people take whatever they want onto their own plate. You don't make portion sizes, because you will leave one intact almond in the big bowl and the person that gets it wins a prize. I know there are similar traditions with other types of dishes around the holidays as well. This is the Danish one. And comment down below if you have any similar, like both games, contests, or like fun things that you do around the holiday table. This is absolutely mandatory. We are going to do that as well for accuracy, even though it's just me eating it right now. Now, when it comes to the cherry, I actually bought pre-made cherry sauce, mostly because it's basically impossible to get fresh cherries in Denmark in December. If you could get them, they would probably not be that sustainable. So both in terms of impact and convenience, it's actually just better to get a Tetra Pak. Just be mindful that it's not everywhere you can recycle Tetra Pak. I can recycle Tetra Pak in my local area, which I'm super stoked about. I still minimize and reduce the amount of Tetra Pak packaging that I use, but it's not the end of the world. I'm just gonna pour a little bit into a cup and then heat it in the microwave. That's also a lot more energy efficient than turning on the stove. So here we have our whipped cream. You can add a little bit of sugar into it if you want, but this type of vegan whipped cream is actually already pretty sweet. So I'm not going to do that, but that's sort of preference and what you want to do. Okay, seriously, it's winter wonderland out there. Now I just have to turn the porridge into the whipped cream and stir it to combine everything. And that's the dish. So for context, it's around 10 here. I haven't had breakfast yet because I wanted to finish this video with you guys. So this is going to be my breakfast. Honestly, I have no note all day. I also had a very elaborate Christmas feast for dinner by myself yesterday. It was amazing. Anyway, that was my take on how to make the classic Danish holiday foods plant-based and more sustainable. It doesn't actually require a lot. A lot of the things that we use is actually already plant-based or really, really easy to substitute. Then there are some of the bigger things like the mains and how to go about it, but that's sort of a preference thing on what you want to do. We've had the dessert be vegan for 5-ish years now, I think, because even if you still eat meat, you're not gonna taste the difference in the vegan porridge. Like it's just the same thing. So that was it for this video. I hope that you liked it. If you did, leave me a comment down below and let me know what you have for Christmas dinner if you celebrate Christmas. If you celebrate something else, tell me sort of what foods do you have? I'm honestly really interested in hearing sort of people's holiday traditions and what you guys prefer to eat and such. Let me know. And thank you so much to Ren for sponsoring this video, and take really good care of yourselves. Until next time, bye. Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green, zero-waste content, and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!